Margaret Chen thought her story ended when cancer took her husband 3 years ago. At 58, she's barely keeping their beloved bookstore alive, drowning in bills and memories. Then Bob Williams walks through her door, a gentle retired veterinarian, also widowed, looking for gardening books. When her bookshelf crashes down, he doesn't just fix the broken wood. He begins mending her broken heart. But love after loss isn't simple. Margaret's daughter thinks she's moving too fast. The community has opinions. Financial crisis threatens to destroy everything David built. And Margaret's own pride might push away the one man who sees her strength instead of her struggles. Watch as two souls who thought their chance at happiness had passed discover that some love stories are worth waiting a lifetime for. From coffee shop conversations to community rallies, from stubborn independence to vulnerable trust. This is a story about second chances, chosen family, and the courage to love again. Can Margaret let go of guilt and embrace a future she never planned? Will Bob's patient heart be enough to overcome the obstacles in their path? And when the whole town bands together to save the bookstore, will they also save two hearts that deserve their happy ending? A story that proves it's never too late to write a new chapter. Love lost community and the beautiful messiness of starting over at 60. Like, if you believe in second chances, subscribe for more heartwarming stories that prove love has no expiration date. What would you do in Margaret's situation? Tell us in the comments below. I can't let him rescue me. Widowed bookstore owner's heart melts when stranger fixed more than just her shelf. The morning light filters through the dust motes dancing above the wooden shelves of Between the Lines. I stand behind the counter, my fingers tracing the worn edges of David's framed photograph. His smile looks back at me, frozen in a moment 3 summers ago when the world still made sense. I set the frame down with practiced gentleness and walk to the front door. The brass bell chimes as I flip the sign from closed to open. Another day, another attempt at carrying on. The shelves stretch around me like old friends, each book carefully arranged by David's system that only I understand now. Literature here, biography there. The self-help section he'd reluctantly added when times got tough, muttering about dumbing down the classics. "You'd forgive me for the romance novels, wouldn't you?" I whisper to the empty store. 2 miles away, I imagine another soul is starting his morning. Robert Williams, though I don't know his name yet, stands in his kitchen staring at boxes that still bear neat labels, Kitchen Fragile, and Bob's books. His house smells of fresh paint and possibility, but feels hollow without the laughter that once echoed off these walls. He sold his veterinary practice in Hartford, 40 years of mending broken wings and healing wounded hearts, and in the end he couldn't save the one that mattered most. The guilt sits heavy in his chest, familiar as an old coat he can't shed. The real estate agent had called this place a charming starter home. At 62, he wonders what exactly he's starting. His phone buzzes, Michael calling from Seattle. "Dad, how's the unpacking going?" He glances around the half-empty boxes, the furniture arranged, but not yet home. "Getting there, son. You sure about this move? I mean, you don't know anyone there." Sometimes that's exactly what a person needs. A pause. Michael's breathing 3,000 miles away. "I worry about you being alone." "I'm not alone. I have books to read and a garden to plant." "That's not the same thing, Dad." After Michael hangs up, Bob sits in the silence. The boy is right, of course. Books and gardens can't fill the Linda-shaped hole in his life, but they're a start. He picks up his keys. Time to find something to read about tomatoes. The bell above my door sings its welcome as a man steps inside. The scent hits him first, I can tell. Old paper leather bindings and the lavender sachets I keep hidden among the shelves. David had loved lavender. "Can I help you find something?" He looks up from my display of local authors. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a cardigan that's seen better days. There's something gentle about his face, something that speaks of careful hands and patient hearts. "I'm looking for books on gardening, vegetables specifically." "Ah, a practical reader." I emerge from behind the counter, moving between the stacks with the confidence of 15 years in this space. "Are you new to gardening or just new to the area?" "Both, I suppose." He follows me toward the back of the store. "Just moved here from Hartford." "Welcome to Millfield." I pull a thick volume from a high shelf, then another. "These should get you started. Peterson's is comprehensive, maybe too comprehensive. Brennan's is more accessible for beginners. He accepts the books, and I notice the care with which he handles them, like David used to. You know them well. My husband started this collection. I pause, feeling that familiar shadow cross my face. He believed every book should earn its place on the shelf. Sounds like a wise man. He was. The shadow lifts, replaced by something warmer. I'm Margaret, by the way, but everyone calls me Maggie. Bob Williams. He shifts the books to extend his hand. His grip is firm, brief. Thank you for the recommendations. Of course, let me know how your garden grows. He's halfway to the register when the crash comes, a thunderous cascade of wood and paper. One of my tall bookcases near the window gives way, spilling its contents across the floor in a chaos of scattered stories. Oh, damn, I breathe, staring at the wreckage. Bob sets his books on a nearby table and rolls up his sleeves. Looks like the bracket gave way. I can fix this. Oh no, I couldn't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. He kneels beside the fallen shelf, running his hands along the wood with the confidence of someone who understands how things work. Good bones. Just need some attention. I watch him examine the damage, something unreadable stirring in my chest. I should probably call someone professional. I am someone professional. Was anyway. 30 years of fixing things in my practice. He looks up at me with kind eyes. Not books, but the principle's the same. Sometimes what's broken just needs the right kind of care. I'm quiet for a long moment, studying his face. There's no agenda here, no expectation of reward. Just kindness offered freely. Finally, I nod. I'd appreciate the help, but I insist on paying you. How about you let me borrow these books instead? He gestures to the gardening guides. Call it a fair trade. Deal? My smile feels different now, less guarded, more real. But I'm making coffee while you work. An hour later, the bookcase stands sturdy again, its shelves restocked with rescued novels. I hand Bob a mug of coffee, noting how he inhales the rich aroma before tasting it. A man who appreciates small pleasures. You're handy with tools. I observe, settling into the reading chair beside the window. Necessity teaches you a lot. He sips the coffee. I've made it just right, not too strong. My wife used to say I could fix anything except my own cooking. Used to? She died 5 years ago. Cancer. The words sound strange in his mouth, final as falling leaves. Yours time. 3 years. Cancer as well. I cup my mug with both hands, letting the warmth seep into my palms. I'm sorry for your loss. And I for yours. We sit in comfortable silence, two people who understand that some sorrows are too deep for casual comfort. Outside my window, October paints the maple trees in shades of fire and gold. This is a beautiful store, Bob says finally. How long have you had it? 15 years. David's dream, really. He was an English teacher, always talked about creating a place where books could bring people together. I gesture around the cozy space that holds so much of my heart. A community centered on stories. He succeeded. I hope so. It's harder now. Amazon ebooks. People don't browse like they used to. I shake my head. Listen to me going on about business troubles to a customer. Sometimes strangers are the safest people to talk to. I look at him with sudden intensity. Are you a stranger, I mean? The question hangs between us, layered with meaning I'm not sure I'm ready to unpack. Bob considers this carefully. I suppose that depends on how long I keep coming back for book recommendations. And will you keep coming back? I have a lot to learn about gardening. My smile is answer enough. 2 weeks settle into a rhythm I hadn't expected. Every afternoon at 3:30, I find myself listening for the brass bell, and Bob pushes through my door like clockwork, bringing with him the scent of autumn air and something indefinable that makes my day brighter. Today, I look up from cataloging new arrivals, my face brightening in a way that surprises me. Let me guess, I say. The tomatoes are giving you trouble. The tomatoes are thriving. It's the Brussels sprouts that have declared war. He approaches the counter, and I notice how he takes in the small display of fall-themed bookmarks I've arranged. Everything in this place shows my careful attention, and somehow he sees that. I think I need reinforcements. The Brussels sprouts offense, a classic October battle. I disappear into the gardening section, returning with a slim volume. Morrison swears by companion planting. Might be your secret weapon. As I ring up the book, I'm aware of Bob watching me work. The way afternoon sunlight catches in my hair, the concentration in my expression as I calculate tax in my head rather than using the register. There's something almost meditative about being seen this way, not as the widow trying to hold things together, but simply as myself. Coffee, I ask, as has become our habit. Always. We settle into what I've come to think of as our chairs. Mine by the window is angled toward the poetry section. The coffee today is hazelnut rich and warming. I've been wondering, I say, curling my feet under myself. What brought you to Millfield besides the affordable housing market? Bob chuckles. You heard about that, did you? Small town. Mrs. Patterson next door knows everyone's business within 48 hours of their arrival. I sip my coffee. But she didn't know why a retired veterinarian would leave a successful practice to move somewhere he doesn't know a soul. Maybe I wanted not to know a soul. And do you want that? The question is gentle, but I can see its weight in his expression. He studies my face, and I try to keep my openness patient, non-demanding. I thought I did. Linda and I, we had the same friends for 30 years. After she died, every gathering became a reminder of what was missing. Every conversation started with, "How are you holding up?" Or Linda would have loved this. People mean well. They do. But eventually you realize you're not grieving your wife anymore. You're grieving the person you used to be when she was alive. He sets down his mug, and I'm surprised by his honesty. In Hartford, I was Linda's husband who happened to be a veterinarian. Here, maybe I can just be Bob. I nod slowly. This I understand completely. After David died, everyone in town had an opinion about how I should handle the store, where I should live, whether I should date. As if being widowed suddenly made me a community project. And have you dated? The question slips out before he can stop it. My eyebrows rise, and I watch heat climb his neck. I'm sorry, that was... No, it's fine. I consider my answer. A few well-meaning friends have tried to set me up, but it felt like betrayal, like I was trying to replace something irreplaceable. And now, I meet his eyes. Now I'm having coffee with a man who fixed my bookshelf and doesn't seem to need me to be anyone other than who I am. The words settle between us, honest and unadorned. I watch something shift in Bob's expression, like ice beginning to crack on a winter pond. For what it's worth, he says quietly, I like who you are. My smile is soft, a little shy. I was hoping you'd say that. That evening I close the store and find myself humming, actually humming, for the first time in months. There's something about Bob that brings music back into my days. The way he listens, really listens. The way he sees beauty in broken bookshelves and possibility in Brussels sprouts. I'm arranging tomorrow's window display when my phone rings. Sarah calling from Boston. Mom, you sound different. Different how, sweetheart? I don't know. Lighter, maybe? Less like you're holding your breath all the time. I pause, considering. I've made a friend. A friend? Bob. He's new in town, recently widowed. We talk about books and gardens and life, I suppose. I find myself smiling at the memory of this afternoon's conversation. He makes me remember what it's like to laugh. A pause on Sarah's end. Is he... Are you two? We're friends, Sarah. Nothing more complicated than that. But you'd like it to be... The question catches me off guard with its directness. Sarah has always been perceptive, even as a child. I don't know. Maybe. It's been so long since I even thought about... Mom, you know Dad would want you to be happy, right? Tears prick my eyes unexpectedly. I know. Intellectually, I know that. But knowing and feeling are different things. Tell me about Bob. So I do. I talk about Brussels sprouts and broken bookshelves, and the way he handles books like they're precious things. I talk about kindness and coffee and the comfortable silences that don't need filling. When I finally hang up, I realize I've been talking for 30 minutes, and Sarah hasn't interrupted once. Be careful, Mom, she'd said at the end. But not too careful. The next afternoon brings unseasonable warmth, the kind of October day that feels like summer's last gift. I prop my door open, letting autumn air mix with the familiar scent of old paper. Bob looks up from helping Mrs. Chen. I still introduce myself by both names, honoring David's wish that I embrace all parts of who I am. She's holding up a mystery novel, and I'm in the middle of my standard recommendation. Mrs. Chen recommends this one, she says as Bob approaches. Says it'll keep me guessing until the last page. David always said a good mystery should surprise you 3 times, at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end, I reply, ringing up the sale. This one delivers on all counts. As Mrs. Chen leaves, Bob approaches the counter. Mrs. Chen, David's idea. He said I should use both names professionally, honor my heritage and our partnership. I laugh softly. I kept meaning to change it back, but it grew on me. It suits you, both parts of who you are. Something flickers across my expression. Recognition maybe of being truly seen. You're early today. I was wondering. Bob hesitates, and suddenly I'm reminded that we're both new at this, whatever this is. Would you like to have dinner somewhere other than coffee in your store? I go very still. Like a date. The word hangs between us, loaded with possibility and fear in equal measure. I can see his courage wavering. Like dinner, he says carefully. Between friends who enjoy each other's company. I study his face for a long moment. Kind eyes, patient mouth, hands that know how to fix broken things. Martha's Cafe closes at 8. There's a place called Romano's about 20 minutes from here. Good Italian food, quiet atmosphere. Is that a yes? That's a yes. My smile is nervous but genuine. 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. Romano's is everything I promised. Dim lighting, checkered tablecloths, and the kind of family-run warmth that makes conversation flow like wine. We've been talking for an hour, and I'm surprised by how natural this feels, how right. So you've never been to California? Bob asks, twirling linguine around his fork with practiced ease. Never had reason to. David didn't like to fly, and I suppose I got comfortable with small horizons. I sip my wine, a modest Chianti that has surprised us both with its complexity. What about you? Did you and Linda travel much? Some. She wanted to see Italy, but we kept saying next year. Then next year became when we retire. Then, he shrugs. You know how the story ends. Next year is a dangerous promise. The most dangerous. Bob reaches across the table, his fingers brushing mine where they rest beside my wine glass. Which is why I'm glad I asked you to dinner tonight instead of waiting for someday. I turn my hand palm up, letting our fingers intertwine. His skin is warm, calloused in all the right places. Hands that have spent years healing and helping. I haven't done this in a long time, I admit. Sat across from someone and wondered what they were thinking. Right now I'm thinking you have beautiful hands. I laugh, the sound bright and unguarded. These old things, they're permanently stained with ink from price tags. Honest hands. Working hands. He traces the line of my knuckles with his thumb. Beautiful hands. The check comes too soon, accompanied by the regret that always follows perfect evenings. As we walk to our cars in the restaurant parking lot, I feel the weight of unfinished conversations and unexpressed possibilities. Thank you, I say, stopping beside my aging Honda Civic. For dinner, for this. Thank you for saying yes. Bob stands close enough that I can catch his cologne, something woodsy and warm that reminds me of Saturday mornings. Can we do it again? I'd like that. We stand there in the amber glow of the parking lot lights, neither quite ready to break the spell. Finally, Bob leans forward and kisses my cheek, brief and gentle. Good night, Maggie. Good night, Bob. As I watch his taillights disappear into the darkness, I feel something I'd almost forgotten existed. Anticipation for tomorrow. 3 days later, I'm in the small garden behind my store, kneeling among the remnants of summer flowers. I look up as Bob approaches, soil smudged on my cheek and autumn leaves caught in my hair. I was wondering when you'd find my secret garden, I say, rocking back on my heels. David planted it the year we opened, said every bookstore should have a place where stories could take root outdoors too. Bob surveys the space, maybe 30 feet square, bordered by a low stone wall and filled with the kind of thoughtful planning that speaks of deep love for growing things. Even in October's decline, I can see him recognizing the garden's bones, its potential. It's beautiful, he says, but it could be more. I raise an eyebrow. Is that your professional opinion, Dr. Williams? It's my friendly opinion. You've got good soil, good drainage, decent light, but you're underutilizing your space. He kneels beside me, pointing to a bare patch near the wall. Herb garden here, practical and fragrant. Maybe a small seating area there for people who want to read outside. You see all that? I see possibility. Bob meets my eyes. The same way you probably see possibility in every person who walks into your store looking for the right book. Something shifts in my expression. Surprise recognition, maybe something deeper. This man sees me, really sees me. Would you help me plan it? I mean, I know enough to keep David's perennials alive, but designing something new, I'd love to help. We spend the next hour walking the small space, Bob sketching rough plans on the back of a bookmark, while I describe my vision of morning coffee among the mint and customers discovering poetry beneath the apple tree. Spring planting, Bob says, showing me his crude diagram. We'll need to order bulbs soon if you want tulips. The word hangs between us heavier than it should be. I watch Bob realize what he's assumed the future he's casually included himself in. I mean, He fumbles for words that won't presume too much or too little. I reach out, covering his hand with mine. I like the sound of we. As if summoned by the intimacy of the moment, my phone buzzes. I glance at the screen and sigh. Sarah, my daughter. She has impeccable timing for checking up on me. Take it. I should probably get home anyway. But as Bob starts to leave, he hears my side of the conversation drifting through the autumn air. Yes, I'm fine. No, I don't need anything from the store. Actually, I've made a friend. His name is Bob. The warmth in my voice as I say his name stays with Bob all the way home, a small light against the gathering darkness of evening. That night, as I sit in my kitchen reading Morrison's Guide to Companion Planting, the book Bob recommended, I find myself thinking not about herbs and vegetables, but about the way his eyes lit up when he talked about spring gardens and shared tomorrows. For the first time in 3 years, the future feels like something worth planning for. The morning starts like any other, coffee brewing books to shelve the familiar rhythm of opening between the lines. But as I unlock the front door, I see Sarah's rental car parked across the street. My heart does a little skip. She wasn't supposed to visit until Thanksgiving. The bell chimes as she enters, and I can read the concern in her posture before she even speaks. My daughter inherited David's analytical mind and my stubborn streak, a combination that can be either wonderful or terrifying. Surprise, she says, but her smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. I had a conference in Hartford and thought I'd drive over. Of course you did. I hug her, breathing in the familiar scent of her expensive perfume. At 32, Sarah has built a successful marketing career in Boston, but she still smells like the little girl who used to help me dust these same shelves. It's wonderful to see you, sweetheart. So, she says, settling into what has become Bob's usual chair. Tell me about this Bob. Heat rises in my cheeks. There's not much to tell. He's a kind man who's helped me with some repairs around here. Mom, Sarah's voice carries the patience she uses with difficult clients. You mentioned him 4 times in our last phone call, and you were humming when you answered the phone yesterday. You haven't hummed since Dad died. Before I can respond, the bell chimes again. Bob steps through the door, carrying a small potted plant, a late-blooming mum in russet and gold. He stops short when he sees Sarah, his smile faltering slightly. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had company. Bob, this is my daughter, Sarah. Sarah, this is Bob Williams. I watch my daughter assess him with the sharp eyes she inherited from both sides of the family. Bob, to his credit, doesn't fidget under her scrutiny. He simply extends his hand with the same quiet confidence I've come to appreciate. It's nice to meet you, Sarah. Your mother talks about you often. Does she? Sarah's handshake is firm, professional. She's mentioned you as well, recently. The temperature in the room seems to drop several degrees. I clear my throat. Bob brought me a plant for the garden. How thoughtful. Sarah's smile is polite and cold as winter rain. Are you a landscaper, Mr. Williams? Retired veterinarian, actually, but I enjoy gardening. Bob's voice remains steady, but I can see the tension in his shoulders. I should let you two visit. Maggie, I'll see you later. As the door closes behind him, I turn to face my daughter. That was rude. That was careful. Sarah crosses her arms. Mom, what do you really know about this man? I know he's kind. I know he's patient. I know he makes me feel less alone in this world. My voice rises slightly. What else do I need to know? How about his financial situation, his health history, whether he's actually widowed or just separated? Sarah ticks off points on her fingers like she's presenting a case. Dad has only been gone 3 years. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sink into my chair, suddenly feeling every one of my 58 years. Do you think I don't know how long it's been? Do you think I don't count every day? Then why are you rushing into something with the first man who pays attention to you? Rushing. I laugh, but there's no humor in it. Sarah, we've had coffee and one dinner. We're planning a garden together. If that's rushing, then I've lived a very sheltered life. You have lived a sheltered life. You and Dad, you were each other's whole world. You don't know how to read the signs when someone might be taking advantage. I stand up abruptly, anger flaring hot in my chest. Taking advantage of what? My vast wealth, my stunning beauty, my youth. I gesture around the store at the worn furniture and carefully mended displays. What exactly do you think Bob is after? Sarah's expression softens slightly. Mom, I'm not saying he's a con man, but you're vulnerable right now. You're lonely, and this store is struggling, and how do you know the store is struggling? She has the grace to look embarrassed. I've been watching the financial reports you email me, the quarterly statements. Revenue is down 30% from last year. The fight goes out of me as quickly as it came. I slump back into my chair, suddenly exhausted. Of course Sarah knows. She's been handling my business correspondence since David died, helping me navigate insurance claims and tax forms. Nothing gets past her. I'm trying, Sarah. I'm trying to keep this place alive to honor what your father built. But it's hard. I know it is. She kneels beside my chair, taking my hands in hers. And maybe this Bob person is wonderful. Maybe he's everything you say he is. But I can't stand the thought of someone hurting you when you're already hurting so much. I squeeze her hand, seeing David's protective instincts reflected in our daughter's worried face. I appreciate your concern, but I need to make my own choices, even if they're mistakes. Even if they break your heart. Even then. That evening, I find myself walking past Bob's house on Elm Street. It's a modest colonial with neat landscaping and warm light spilling from the kitchen window. Through the glass, I can see him moving around, probably making dinner for one. The sight makes my chest ache. I almost turn around twice before finally working up the courage to knock. Bob opens the door looking surprised but pleased. He's changed from his afternoon cardigan into a soft flannel shirt that brings out the blue in his eyes. Maggie, is everything all right? I owe you an apology for Sarah's behavior this afternoon. You don't owe me anything. He steps aside, gesturing me in. She's protecting her mother. I respect that. His kitchen is tidy and functional with the kind of touches that speak of a man learning to live alone. A single coffee mug in the dish drainer, today's newspaper, folded precisely at the crossword puzzle, a small herb garden flourishing on the windowsill. Can I make you some tea? He asks. I was just about to have some myself. That would be lovely. As he fills the kettle, I perch on one of his kitchen stools, feeling oddly domestic in this space that smells like sage and something indefinably masculine. Sarah thinks I'm vulnerable, I say without preamble. She thinks you might be taking advantage of my grief and loneliness. Bob's hand still on the tea canister. And what do you think? I think she's scared. She spent 3 years watching me barely hold things together, and now suddenly I'm humming again and talking about spring gardens. It must be terrifying to think I might get hurt. Might you get hurt? I mean, the question hangs between us, honest and necessary. I consider it carefully. Yes, I think I might. Are you planning to hurt me, Bob? He turns to face me fully, his expression grave. I hope not, but I can't promise I won't. People hurt each other sometimes, even when they're trying not to. At least you're honest about it. The kettle whistles and Bob pours water over tea bags in 2 mismatched mugs. The domesticity of the moment, sitting in his kitchen sharing evening tea, feels both natural and momentous. Tell me about Sarah, he says, settling across from me at the small table. What was she like growing up? Fierce, brilliant, stubborn as a mule. I smile at the memories flooding back. She was reading chapter books at 4, building elaborate fairy houses in the backyard at 6. David used to joke that she got his brains and my determination, which was either going to change the world or drive us all crazy. She loves you very much. Sometimes I think she loves me too much. After David died, she wanted me to move to Boston, live in her guest room, let her take care of me. I sip my tea, chamomile with honey, perfectly soothing. I couldn't do it. This store, this town, it's all I have left of him. But now, I meet his eyes. Now I'm beginning to think it might not be all I have left of living. The next morning brings Mrs. Patterson to my door before I've even finished my first cup of coffee. My 73-year-old neighbor has elevated nosiness to an art form, but she does it with such transparent affection that I've never had the heart to discourage her. "Margaret, dear," she says, bustling in with a plate of fresh muffins. "I saw that handsome man of yours leaving your house last evening. Quite late, wasn't it?" 9:30 is hardly scandalous, Mrs. Patterson, and he's not my anything." "Of course not, dear. I'm sure you were just discussing literature." She sets the muffins on my counter with a knowing smile. "Blueberry. Made them myself this morning." Before I can respond, the bell chimes again. Reverend Thompson from the Methodist Church fills the doorway, his tall frame slightly stooped, but his smile as warm as ever. At 68, he's presided over more of this town's joys and sorrows than anyone else, including David's memorial service 3 years ago. "Morning, Maggie, Mrs. Patterson." He nods to both of us. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by to see how you're doing." Mrs. Patterson practically vibrates with the need to share gossip. "We were just discussing Margaret's friend, the veterinarian who's been helping with her repairs." "Ah, yes, Bob Williams, lovely man. We met at the hardware store yesterday." Reverend Thompson settles into a chair with the easy manner of someone accustomed to being welcomed everywhere. He mentioned he's been attending services at the Episcopal Church. I told him he was welcome at our Sunday potluck any time. I feel heat rise in my cheeks. "You discussed me with him, only to say what a pillar of the community you are, how much you've meant to this town, especially since David's passing." The Reverend's eyes are kind but knowing. "He speaks of you with great affection, Maggie." Mrs. Patterson leans forward conspiratorially. "But is it appropriate? I mean, David was such a wonderful man and it hasn't been that long." "Mrs. Patterson," Reverend Thompson's voice carries gentle authority, "grief doesn't follow a calendar. And love, whether it's the love we hold for those we've lost or the possibility of love we might find again, is always a blessing." I blink back unexpected tears. "Thank you, Reverend. Besides," he continues with a twinkle in his eye, "David Chen was one of the most generous souls I ever knew. I have a hard time imagining he'd want you to spend the rest of your life alone out of loyalty to his memory." As they leave, Mrs. Patterson clutching her empty muffin plate and looking slightly chastened, I realize I've been holding my breath. For the first time since Bob entered my life, someone in authority has given me permission to feel hopeful. But hope, I'm learning, can be a dangerous thing. The letter arrives with the afternoon mail nestled between a book catalog and a utility bill. The return address makes my stomach clench. Henderson Property Management. My landlord. With shaking hands, I tear open the envelope and read words that feel like ice water in my veins. Notice of rent increase. Effective January 1st, monthly rent will increase from $1,800 to $2,500. 40%. A 40% increase. I sink into my chair behind the register, the letter crumpling in my grip. $2,500 a month. On my current revenue, I'd be lucky to clear $1,500 after inventory and utilities. The math is simple and devastating. The bell chimes, and I look up to see Bob entering with his usual afternoon smile. It fades immediately when he sees my face. "Maggie, what's wrong?" I hand him the letter without a word, watching his expression grow grave as he reads. "This is..." He runs a hand through his silver hair. "This is substantial. It's impossible." My voice sounds strange, distant. "I can't afford it. Even if I cut every expense, sold everything that isn't nailed down, I couldn't make those numbers work." Bob pulls a chair close to mine, his presence steady and warm. "Have you talked to your landlord? Maybe you could negotiate something given how long you've been here. Henderson bought the building 6 months ago. He's been pushing out all the long-term tenants, replacing us with higher rent businesses." I laugh, but it comes out brittle. He probably thinks a yoga studio or boutique coffee shop would be more profitable than an old-fashioned bookstore. "What about a loan you could renovate, expand your offerings? With what collateral? This business barely breaks even in good months." I gesture around the store that has been my life for 15 years. Maybe it's time to accept reality. Maybe David's dream died with him. "Don't say that." Bob's voice is firm, almost sharp. "This place is his legacy, yes, but it's also yours now. You've put 15 years of your life into these walls, into this community. You can't just give up." "Can't I?" I meet his eyes, feeling hollow and defeated. Maybe Sarah's right. Maybe I should sell what I can, move to Boston, let her take care of me. At least then I wouldn't be a burden on anyone else. Is that what you think you are? A burden? The gentleness in his voice almost undoes me. I look away, focusing on the framed photo of David that watches over everything I do. I think I'm a middle-aged widow trying to hold on to something that's already gone. And I think you're a woman who's created something beautiful and meaningful, and you're scared of fighting for it, because fighting means risking failure. His words hit closer to home than I'm ready to admit. Maybe I don't have any fight left. Bob is quiet for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice is soft but determined. Then let me help you find it again. A month passes, a month of silence between Bob and me that feels like winter settling into my bones. I haven't seen him since the afternoon he offered to help me fight for the store. The offer hung between us like a bridge I was too proud or too frightened to cross. Instead, I thanked him politely and asked for some time to think. He'd nodded, kissed my cheek with devastating gentleness, and walked out of my life as quietly as he'd entered it. Every afternoon at 3:30, I find myself listening for the brass bell that doesn't chime. Every morning, I discover new reasons to walk past the garden window, hoping to catch a glimpse of silver hair among the dying flowers. But Bob has made good on my request for space, and the absence of him is a constant ache. The worst part is that I don't even know why I pushed him away. Fear, maybe. Pride, certainly. The terror of letting someone else see just how close to falling apart I really am. Sarah calls every few days, her voice bright with forced cheer as she updates me on her job. Her life, the man she's been dating who makes her laugh. She doesn't mention Bob, and neither do I. Some conversations are too fragile for words. "Mom, you sound tired," she says during one of these calls. "Are you sleeping okay?" I'm sitting in my kitchen surrounded by bills I can't pay and eviction notices I can't bear to read. The store's November revenue was the worst on record. Apparently, word of my impending closure has begun to spread, and people are reluctant to invest in a bookstore that might not exist come spring. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just busy with inventory. Have you thought any more about my offer? The guest room here is lovely, and there are some wonderful libraries in Boston where you could volunteer. I'm not ready for that yet. But if things get worse with the store, then I'll deal with it when that happens. After we hang up, I sit in the gathering darkness of my kitchen and allow myself to wonder what might have been different if I'd said yes to Bob's help. If I'd swallowed my pride and accepted that sometimes love means letting someone share your burdens. But it's too late for that now. I made my choice, and now I have to live with it. And what I don't know, what I can't see from inside my cocoon of stubborn self-sufficiency, is that Bob has been struggling too. He walks past my store every morning on his way to the post office, timing his route for the moments when he knows I'll be in the back room sorting inventory. He sees the lights burning late into the evening, the growing pile of unopened mail on my counter, the way I've begun to move through my own space like a ghost. His garden, the one we planned together in those golden October days, remains half-finished. He's planted the spring bulbs we selected, tulips and daffodils that will bloom in a world where we may no longer speak to each other. But the herb section lies fallow, and the reading bench he'd sketched so carefully remains unbuilt. How do you create a space meant for shared joy when you are no longer sure sharing is welcome? Michael calls on a Tuesday evening, catching Bob in the middle of a dinner he has no appetite for. "Dad, you sound awful. Just tired, son. Is everything okay with the house? The move your friend?" Bob stares at his reflection in the dark kitchen window, seeing a man who looks older than his 62 years. "Maggie and I aren't speaking at the moment." "What happened?" "I offered to help her with something, and she decided she didn't need help. From me or anyone else, I suspect." "That's ridiculous. Everyone needs help sometimes. Not everyone can accept it." Bob runs a hand through his hair, feeling every day of his age. "She's proud, Michael. Independent. She's spent the last 3 years proving to herself and everyone else that she can carry on alone. I think my offer felt like charity to her." "Was it charity, I mean?" The question stops Bob short. He considers it, carefully probing his own motives like a doctor examining a wound. "Maybe partly, but mostly it was love. I love her, Michael. I love her strength and her stubbornness and the way she makes coffee like it's a sacred ritual. I love the way she talks about books like they're old friends. I wanted to help because I can't bear to watch someone I care about struggle alone when I have resources that could make a difference." "Have you told her that about loving her, I mean?" "No, I didn't get the chance." "Then maybe you should find a way to make that chance." After Michael hangs up, Bob sits in his kitchen until well past midnight, thinking about love and pride, and the fine line between helping and enabling. Somewhere across town, Maggie is probably doing the same thing, and the distance between them feels like an ocean rather than a few tree-lined streets. Town. The answer comes from an unexpected source, Mrs. Patterson. I'm closing the store early on a Thursday afternoon. There haven't been any customers since lunch, and I can't afford to keep the heat running if no one's buying books, when she appears at my door like a determined angel in a wool coat. Margaret Chen, you open this door right now. We need to talk. I let her in because refusing Mrs. Patterson is like trying to stop rain with an umbrella. She bustles past me, setting a covered casserole dish on my counter with the authority of someone who's been feeding this town's sorrows for 7 decades. Sit down, she commands. We're going to discuss your situation. Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate your concern, but nothing. I've lived in this town for 73 years, and I've never seen 2 people make such a mess of something so simple. She fixes me with a stare that could strip paint. You love him. He loves you. The only thing standing between you and happiness is your own stubborn pride. It's not that simple. It never is, dear. Love would be boring if it were simple. She settles into a chair with the air of someone prepared to stay as long as necessary. Now what's this nonsense about closing the store? I shouldn't be surprised that she knows. In a town this size, secrets have the lifespan of mayflies. The rent increase is impossible to meet. I've looked at every option cut, every expense I can think of. The math just doesn't work. And Bob offered to help. He offered to help me fight it, but I can't let him solve my problems for me. Why not? The question is so direct, so matter-of-fact that it takes my breath away. Because if I let him rescue me, what does that make me? Happy. Mrs. Patterson's voice is gentle but firm. Margaret, dear, I've been married 3 times, buried 2 husbands, divorced one who deserved it. And I've learned that love isn't about being strong enough to handle everything alone. It's about being brave enough to let someone stand beside you when life gets hard. But what if he's only helping out of pity? What if he thinks I'm pathetic? Then you don't know him very well. She reaches across the table to take my hand. That man looks at you like you hung the moon, dear. When he talks about you, and yes, he does talk about you to anyone who'll listen, it's not pity I hear in his voice. It's pride. And love, and the kind of admiration that comes from seeing someone beautiful fight to preserve something precious. Tears I've been holding back for weeks finally spill over. I miss him, Mrs. Patterson. I miss him so much it feels like losing David all over again. Then stop missing him and go get him back. What if it's too late? What if I've ruined everything? Mrs. Patterson stands up, smoothing her coat with the brisk efficiency of a general marshalling troops. Margaret Chen, you are not a woman who gives up. You've spent 15 years building something beautiful in this town, raised a daughter who could run the world if she set her mind to it, and survived losses that would have broken lesser souls. You think one stubborn veterinarian with a good heart is going to defeat you now? Despite everything, I find myself smiling. When you put it like that, that's the spirit. Now I have a plan. 10th. The plan, it turns out, involves the entire town. Mrs. Patterson has been busy during my month of self-imposed exile, rallying the forces of Millfield's surprisingly robust network of do-gooders and busybodies. By Friday morning, my store is full of people I haven't seen in months, all carrying coffee cups from Martha's Cafe and wearing expressions of determined cheerfulness. Margaret, Reverend Thompson beams at me from behind a stack of children's books. We're here for the emergency town meeting. What emergency town meeting? The one about saving between the lines, of course. Martha Jenkins from the cafe appears at my elbow, carrying a tray of muffins that smell like heaven. Mrs. Patterson called everyone last night. We've got a plan. The plan as it unfolds over the next hour is both ambitious and heartwarming. The town wants to turn my bookstore into a community cooperative, a combination bookstore, cafe, and cultural center that would serve everything from coffee and pastries to evening poetry readings and children's story time. Local investors would cover the rent increase, and volunteers would help with daily operations. In return, the space would become a true community hub, the kind of gathering place David always envisioned. It's wonderful, I tell the assembled crowd, and I mean it. But I couldn't ask you all to take such a risk for my sake. You're not asking, says Tom Morrison, who owns the hardware store and apparently has a secret passion for Civil War biographies. We're offering. This town needs a bookstore, Margaret. More than that, it needs this bookstore. The one you and David built, the one you've been keeping alive through sheer force of will. But the financial commitment is manageable when it's spread among 20 families instead of resting on one woman's shoulders. Mrs. Patterson interjects with characteristic briskness. We've done the math, dear. It's not charity, it's investment in our own community. As the meeting breaks up and people filter out in groups of 2 and 3, all talking excitedly about renovation plans and grand reopening celebrations, I find myself standing in the middle of my store feeling overwhelmed and grateful in equal measure. But there's one person conspicuously absent from this outpouring of community support. The one person whose presence would make this moment perfect instead of just wonderful. He wanted to be here, Mrs. Patterson says quietly, reading my thoughts with the uncanny accuracy she's perfected over 7 decades of managing other people's business. I invited him specifically, but he said he didn't want to complicate things for you. Complicate things how? By making you feel obligated to include him in your decisions just because he cares about you. She fixes me with that penetrating stare again. That man is trying very hard to respect the boundaries you set, Margaret, even when those boundaries are breaking his heart. That evening I walked to Bob's house for the second time in our brief, complicated relationship. But this time I'm not running away from anything. I'm running toward the possibility of a future I'm finally brave enough to want. He answers the door looking surprised and wary, as if he's afraid I'm bringing more rejection to his doorstep. The wariness breaks my heart. Hello, Bob. Maggie? His voice is carefully neutral. Is everything all right? Actually, yes. For the first time in weeks, everything might be all right. I take a deep breath. Can we talk? He steps aside to let me in, and I notice the small changes in his kitchen. Fewer dishes in the sink, a newspaper left unread on the counter, the herb garden on his windowsill looking slightly neglected. These are the details of someone who's been going through the motions of living without much enthusiasm for the process. I owe you an apology. I begin, but he holds up a hand. You don't owe me anything, Maggie. I overstepped. I should have. No, you didn't overstep. You offered to help someone you cared about, and I was too proud and scared to accept it gracefully. I perch on the edge of the same stool where I'd sat a month ago, when the world still felt full of possibilities. I've spent 3 years proving to myself and everyone else that I could handle things alone. Your offer felt like evidence that I was failing at that. You weren't failing at anything. Wasn't I? The store is struggling, I'm struggling, and everyone can see it, including you. I meet his eyes, forcing myself to be as honest as I know how to be. I was embarrassed and scared, and I think maybe a little angry that someone I was starting to care about had seen how close I was to falling apart. Bob is quiet for a long moment processing this. And now the whole town has seen how close I was to falling apart, and instead of running away, they've offered to help me put the pieces back together. I smile, feeling lighter than I have in weeks. It's amazing what happens when you stop pretending to be invincible. The community meeting. Mrs. Patterson told me about the cooperative idea. It's wonderful, terrifying and wonderful, and exactly the kind of solution David would have loved. I pause, gathering my courage for what comes next. But it's not complete. What's missing? You. The word comes out smaller than I intended, but it carries all the weight of a month's worth of regret. The plan is missing you, Bob, and so am I. Something shifts in his expression. Hope, maybe, or relief. Maggie, I know I hurt you. I know I pushed you away when what I really wanted was to pull you closer. And I know I have no right to ask for another chance. I slide off the stool, moving closer to where he stands by the counter. But I'm asking anyway, because I miss you. Because I miss us. Because I think we were building something beautiful before I got scared and knocked it down. We were building something beautiful, he agrees softly. The question is whether we can build it again. I'd like to try, if you're willing to risk it. He reaches out, then his hands framing my face with the gentle precision I remember from our first evening in this kitchen. I've been miserable without you. Good, I say, and then I'm laughing and crying at the same time as he pulls me into his arms. I mean, not good that you've been miserable, but good that you missed me, too. I missed everything about you. Your terrible coffee, your stubborn streak, the way you alphabetize everything, including grocery lists. My coffee is not terrible. Your coffee could wake the dead Margaret Chen. It's one of the things I love about you. The words settle between us like a gift we've both been afraid to unwrap. Love. He said love. One of the things I ask, my voice unsteady. There are quite a few others on the list. Tell me. Instead of answering with words, he kisses me. Really kisses me for the first time since this whole complicated dance began. His lips are warm and soft and taste like the peppermint tea he's been drinking, and kissing him feels like coming home to a place I didn't know I'd been looking for. When we finally break apart, both of us breathless and grinning like teenagers, I rest my forehead against his. So, I say, about that garden we planned. Spring planting starts in 6 weeks. Think we can figure out this relationship thing by then. Bob's smile is bright enough to light up the dark December evening. I think we've got a pretty good start. January arrives with the kind of bitter cold that makes you appreciate warm kitchens and good company. Bob and I have spent the past month planning the transformation of Between the Lines into something neither David nor I could have imagined alone, a true community space that honors the past while embracing the future. This morning I wake in my own bed, but reach instinctively for the phone to call the man who's become my partner in everything from coffee brewing to dream building. We haven't spent a night together yet. That feels like a threshold we're both approaching with careful reverence. But we talk every morning and evening like teenagers discovering the magic of connection. Good morning, beautiful. Bob's voice carries warmth that chases away the January chill. Good morning yourself. How did you sleep? Better than I have in years. I stretch under my down comforter, smiling at the ceiling, like someone who knows what she's waking up for. We've developed this routine, 10 minutes of gentle conversation before the day's responsibilities take hold. It's become as essential to my morning as coffee, this daily affirmation that I'm no longer navigating the world alone. Sarah's coming today. I remind him, though we've discussed this visit extensively. My daughter has been wary since her initial meeting with Bob, but she's agreed to return for the grand reopening planning meeting. Progress, I suppose. I know, and I'm looking forward to seeing her again. Liar. All right, I'm terrified, but I'm looking forward to the possibility that she might eventually approve of me making her mother happy. His honesty undoes me as it always does. She will. She just needs time to see what I see. And what do you see? A man who fixes broken things without being asked. Who listens like it's a form of prayer? Who makes me feel like the best version of myself instead of just the leftover pieces of who I used to be? Silence stretches across the phone line, comfortable and full. Then Bob's voice rough with emotion. I love you, Margaret Chen. I love you too, Robert Williams. We've been saying it for weeks now, but it still feels like a small miracle every time. 10. The planning meeting is scheduled for 10 o'clock, but people start arriving at 9:30 with the enthusiasm of co-conspirators about to change the world. Martha brings coffee and pastries from the cafe. Tom Morrison arrives with architectural sketches he's been working on in his spare time. Mrs. Patterson bustles in with fabric samples for new cushions because apparently every revolution needs proper seating. Sarah arrives precisely at 10, looking every inch the successful Boston marketing executive in her tailored coat and designer boots. But I catch her surveying the assembled volunteers with something that might be respect. Impressive turnout, she admits, accepting a cup of Martha's excellent coffee. Your mother has that effect on people, Bob says quietly, appearing at my elbow with the comfortable ease that's become second nature to both of us. She inspires loyalty. Sarah studies him with the analytical gaze she inherited from both sides of the family. And what does she inspire in you, Mr. Williams? Hope, he answers without hesitation. And the desire to be worthy of the faith she's placed in me. Something shifts in my daughter's expression. Surprise, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. Before she can respond, Reverend Thompson calls the meeting to order. The next 2 hours unfold like a masterclass in community organizing. Tom presents his renovation plans, knocking out a wall to create a larger seating area, installing a small kitchen for the cafe component, building custom shelving that can accommodate both books and local artisan goods. Martha outlines the food service plan, emphasizing locally sourced ingredients and partnerships with area farmers. Mrs. Patterson coordinates volunteer schedules with the precision of a military campaign. Through it all, I find myself watching Sarah watch the proceedings. She takes notes in the leather portfolio she's carried since college, asks pointed questions about financial projections and marketing strategies, and gradually begins to look less like a skeptical outsider and more like someone recognizing kindred spirits. You've thought of everything, she says during a brief break, addressing the room in general, but looking at Bob specifically. The business plan is actually quite solid. Your mother's influence, Bob replies. She taught us all to think like David would have, not just about books, but about building something sustainable and meaningful. And you, what's your role in all this? It's the question we've all been dancing around. Bob glances at me and I nod encouragingly. Whatever Maggie needs me to be, he says simply. Financial partner, if that's helpful. General contractor for the renovation. Customer service on busy days. He pauses, his eyes finding mine across the crowded store. Mostly I'm here to make sure she never has to carry a burden alone again. Sarah is quiet for a long moment, studying both of us with the intensity that made her such a formidable student and now makes her such a successful professional. Mom, she says finally, can I talk to you privately too? We step into the back office that served as my refuge for 15 years. Surrounded by David's books and my careful records, Sarah and I face each other across the desk where I've paid bills and planned inventory and tried to hold everything together with determination and prayer. He's not what I expected, Sarah begins. What did you expect? Someone taking advantage of a vulnerable widow, someone looking for easy comfort or financial security. She runs a hand through her hair, a gesture inherited from David when he was thinking hard. Instead, I find a man who's invested his own time and money in saving your dream, who defers to your judgment in front of a room full of people, and who looks at you like what? Like Dad used to look at you, when he thought no one was paying attention. The comparison takes my breath away. Sarah, I was wrong, Mom. Not about you being vulnerable. You are vulnerable, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I was wrong about Bob. He doesn't want to rescue you. He wants to stand beside you while you rescue yourself. Tears blur my vision. You approve? I approve of you being happy. I approve of you humming again and planting gardens and looking forward to tomorrow instead of just surviving it. She comes around the desk to hug me, and for a moment she's my little girl again instead of the polished professional. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. You were protecting me, just like your father would have. Dad would have liked him, wouldn't he? I consider this carefully picturing David's gentle wisdom and generous heart. Your father would have shaken Bob's hand, thanked him for making me smile, and probably recruited him to help build more bookshelves. Sarah laughs, the sound bright and genuine. Then that's all I need to know, Dad. The meeting reconvenes with renewed energy. Sarah, it turns out, has opinions about marketing strategies and social media presence that transform our modest reopening into a regional event. Within an hour, she's coordinated with local newspapers, designed a Facebook campaign, and scheduled a grand opening celebration that will put us on the map throughout Connecticut. You could do this professionally, Tom Morrison observes with admiration. I do, Sarah replies with a grin. And this is the most fun I've had with a project in years. As the meeting winds down and people begin to drift away with their assigned tasks, Sarah approaches Bob with the determined stride of someone settling important business. Mr. Williams, she begins formally. Bob, please. Bob, she extends her hand. I owe you an apology for my behavior last month. I was rude and presumptuous. You were protective. I respect that. Still, I misjudged you. And more importantly, I misjudged what my mother needs. Sarah glances at me, then back to Bob. She needs a partner, not a caretaker. Someone who sees her strength instead of just her struggles. I see both, Bob says quietly. Her strength is more impressive because of her struggles, not in spite of them. Sarah nods approvingly. Take care of her, Bob. Not because she can't take care of herself, but because she deserves someone who wants to. I intend to do exactly that. As Sarah leaves to catch her train back to Boston, she hugs me with fierce affection. I'm proud of you, Mom, for all of this. Even the romance with a man you barely know. Especially the romance. Dad always said life was too short for playing it safe. That evening, Bob and I sit in the renovated space that will soon become our expanded cafe area. The walls are bare, the floors covered in dust sheets, but I can see it all in my mind's eye. Customers reading over morning coffee, local authors giving evening readings, children sprawled on colorful rugs listening to stories. Sarah likes you. I tell him, passing a bottle of wine we're sharing straight from the bottle, like teenagers sneaking drinks. Sarah tolerates me because I make her mother happy, Bob corrects. But that's a start. She said you look at me the way David used to. Bob goes very still. How do you feel about that? It's a fair question, one that cuts to the heart of everything we're building together. I consider it carefully watching dust motes dance in the light filtering through my front windows. Grateful, I say finally. David looked at me like I was precious, like I mattered, like my happiness was worth protecting and nurturing. I turned to meet Bob's eyes. I'd forgotten what that felt like until you came along. And now I remember that being loved doesn't diminish me. It amplifies me. It makes me braver and kinder and more generous than I can be on my own. Bob sets down the wine bottle and reaches for my hands. I want to amplify you, Maggie, for the rest of my life, if you'll let me. The words hang between us heavy with implication. We haven't talked about marriage, haven't made promises beyond the immediate future of spring gardens and grand openings. But suddenly, sitting in this space we're transforming together forever feels not just possible, but inevitable. Is that a proposal, Dr. Williams? It's a statement of intent. The proposal comes later when I've had time to pick out a ring and plan something properly romantic. I laugh, pulling him down beside me on the paint-covered tarp that's serving as our temporary seating. I don't need properly romantic. I just need you. You have me. You've had me since the day I fixed your bookshelf, and you made me that terrible coffee. My coffee is not... He silences my protest with a kiss that tastes like wine and promises, and the kind of happiness I'd stopped believing was possible. When we break apart, both of us breathless and grinning, the future stretches ahead of us like an unwritten story full of beautiful possibilities. Spring comes early to Millfield, as if the universe has decided we've waited long enough for renewal. By the first week of March, the bulbs Bob and I planted in those golden October days are pushing through the earth in my secret garden, brave splashes of yellow and purple against the dark soil. The renovations are nearly complete. What was once my modest bookstore has been transformed into something that would make David proud and amazed in equal measure. The main room now flows seamlessly into a cafe area with small round tables and comfortable chairs upholstered in the warm fabrics Mrs. Patterson selected. The kitchen Martha designed is compact but efficient, ready to serve coffee and pastries and light lunches to customers who want to linger over books and conversation. But it's the garden room that takes my breath away every time I see it. Bob convinced Tom Morrison to add a sunroom that opens onto the back garden, creating an indoor-outdoor space where people can read surrounded by growing things year-round. The walls are lined with built-in bookshelves, but French doors open onto the herb garden and flower beds that are just beginning to show their promise. It's beautiful, I tell Bob as we stand in the morning light streaming through the glass walls. Even more beautiful than I imagined. It should be beautiful. It's going to be the heart of this place. He's right, of course. The garden room has already become our favorite spot for planning meetings and quiet conversations. There's something about being surrounded by books and growing things that makes everything feel possible. Today is different, though. Today is the grand reopening of Between the Lines Community Bookstore and Cafe, and I wake with the kind of nervous energy I haven't felt since my wedding day 35 years ago. Bob arrives at 7 with coffee from Martha's Cafe and the morning paper, which features a front-page story about our transformation. The headline reads, "Community Effort Saves Beloved Bookstore," and the accompanying photo shows me and Bob standing together among the spring flowers, both of us grinning like we've just discovered buried treasure. "We look happy," Bob observes, reading over my shoulder. "We look terrified and happy," which is exactly how I feel. Terrified of what? I consider this sipping coffee that actually rivals my own dubious brewing skills. Of failing, of disappointing everyone who's invested so much faith in this project, of not being worthy of all this generosity. "Maggie." Bob sets down his coffee and takes my hands in his. "Look around. Really look." I do as he asks, taking in the transformed space that represents months of community effort and shared dreams. Every detail shows someone's careful attention, from the hand-painted sign Martha's teenage daughter created to the reading nooks Tom Morrison built, to the exact specifications children would need. This isn't just my dream anymore. It's become something bigger and more beautiful than I could have created alone. "This isn't about you proving yourself worthy," Bob continues gently. "This is about a community that already knows your worth and wants to celebrate it. The only way you could fail today is by not letting yourself enjoy what you've accomplished." "What we've accomplished," I correct. "What we've accomplished." He agrees and kisses me softly. By 10 o'clock, the parking lot is full and cars are lining the street. Sarah arrived last night with her boyfriend James, a kind man who makes her laugh and seems genuinely impressed by what we've built here. Michael flew in from Seattle with his wife and 2 children who are currently sampling Martha's cookies with the serious attention of professional food critics. The ribbon-cutting ceremony is scheduled for 11, but people have been streaming in since we opened the doors at 9. Mrs. Patterson holds court near the new fiction section, regaling anyone who'll listen with stories of how she knew from the beginning that Bob and I were meant for each other. Reverend Thompson leads impromptu tours of the garden room, blessing both the plants and the readers who'll nurture them. Mom. Sarah appears at my elbow looking radiant in a way that has nothing to do with her professional success. There's someone here to see you. I follow her gaze to the front door where a familiar figure is shaking hands with Tom Morrison. It takes me a moment to place him, Dr. Harrison David's oncologist, whom I haven't seen since the memorial service 3 years ago. Dr. Harrison. I approach him with the mixture of gratitude and painful memory that his presence evokes. What a surprise! I hope it's a good one. I read about the reopening in the Hartford paper and wanted to see what you'd accomplished. He looks around the bustling space with obvious approval. David would be so proud, Maggie. The words hit me harder than I expected, bringing sudden tears to my eyes. Do you really think so? I know so. He talked about you all the time during his treatments, not about being sick, but about your dreams for this place, about creating a community centered on stories and connection. Dr. Harrison smiles gently. This is exactly what he envisioned. Before I can respond, Bob appears at my side with the instinctive awareness of someone attuned to my emotional weather. I make the introductions watching as 2 important men in my life take each other's measure. Thank you for taking such good care of her, Dr. Harrison tells Bob after they've talked for a few minutes. David worried about leaving her alone. She's never been alone, Bob replies quietly. She's had this community, and now she has me too. But mostly she's had her own strength to carry her through. Dr. Harrison nods approvingly. David chose well when he chose her, and she's chosen well now. The official ribbon cutting happens at exactly 11 o'clock, with half the town gathered in the spring sunshine outside my front door. Mayor Collins says a few words about community spirit and the importance of local businesses. Sarah gives a brief speech about honoring the past while embracing the future. Then Reverend Thompson steps forward with the oversized scissors donated by Tom Morrison's hardware store. The honor should go to Margaret, he announces. This is her vision made real. Our vision, I correct, looking out at the crowd of faces that have become so dear to me. I couldn't have done this alone, and I wouldn't have wanted to. I cut the ribbon with Bob's hand covering mine on the scissors, and the cheer that goes up sounds like celebration and homecoming and new beginnings all rolled into one joyous sound. The afternoon passes in a blur of congratulations and book sales and the kind of community gathering David always dreamed about. Children discover the reading corner Bob designed with cushions at just the right height for small bodies. Teenagers claim the study tables by the windows. Adults settle into the cafe area with coffee and pastries and the luxury of unhurried conversation. Mrs. Chen, I've started thinking of myself by both names now, honoring all the parts of who I've become, moves through it all with the grace of someone who's found her proper place in the world. This is what happiness feels like, I realize. Not the desperate joy of someone grabbing at fleeting pleasure, but the deep contentment of someone whose life aligns with her values. You're radiant, Bob murmurs during a brief lull, catching me as I emerge from the kitchen with a fresh pot of coffee. I'm exhausted and exhilarated and grateful beyond words. And radiant, he insists, spinning me around right there in the middle of the cafe. Absolutely radiant. Several customers applaud our impromptu dance, and I find myself laughing in a way that feels like music. This is my life now, public displays of affection and community celebrations, and the kind of love that doesn't hide itself away. As evening approaches and the crowd begins to thin, I find myself in the garden room with the people who matter most. Sarah and James are examining the herb garden with the serious attention of people who might actually cook with the things they're discussing. Michael's children have claimed the reading corner and are working their way through a stack of picture books with single-minded determination. Mrs. Patterson and Martha are planning the menu for next week's poetry reading. Bob finds me there watching my expanded family with wonder and contentment. Successful day, he asks, beyond my wildest dreams. I lean into his warmth, feeling the solid comfort of his presence. We did it, Bob. We actually did it. We did. And this is just the beginning. He's right, of course. Today is an ending and a beginning, a celebration of what we've preserved and what we're creating. The bookstore will thrive now, supported by a community that believes in the power of stories to connect and heal and inspire. But more than that, I will thrive. Not just as the keeper of David's dream, but as a woman building new dreams with a man who sees all of who I am and loves me anyway. Maggie, Bob says softly, and something in his tone makes me look up at him with sudden attention. Yes. I know I said the proposal would come later with proper planning and romantic settings. He reaches into his jacket pocket and my heart starts beating faster. But standing here surrounded by everything we've built together, this feels like the perfect moment. The ring he pulls out is simple and beautiful, a vintage setting that looks like it has stories of its own to tell. This was Linda's, he says, and my breath catches. But Michael and I agreed it should have a new story now, if you're willing to write that story with me. I look around at the garden room filled with people I love at the bookstore that's become more than I ever dared imagine at this life that's taught me the difference between survival and living. Margaret Chen, Bob continues dropping to one knee right there among the herbs and happy chaos. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life amplifying your light and sharing your dreams and loving you with everything I have? The yes comes from the deepest part of my heart, the part that learned to hope again because of this gentle man who fixes broken things and plants gardens and believes in second chances. Yes, I say, and then louder. Yes. The cheer that goes up from my family and friends sounds like celebration and blessing and pure joy. As Bob slips the ring onto my finger, I realize that some stories don't end. They just begin new chapters. And this chapter, our chapter, is going to be beautiful. 6 months later, the wedding is small and perfect, held in the garden behind the bookstore on a September afternoon, when the light falls golden through the apple trees. I wear a simple dress the color of cream roses, and Bob wears a navy suit that brings out his eyes. Sarah stands beside me as my maid of honor, radiant with her own engagement news. Michael serves as his father's best man, beaming with the joy of seeing his dad so happy. Reverend Thompson performs the ceremony speaking about second chances and the courage to love again and the way some people are meant to find each other despite all the obstacles life places in their path. Mrs. Patterson cries openly, claiming credit for bringing us together. Martha provides a cake that tastes like heaven and looks like something from a fairy tale. But the most perfect moment comes during the reception when Bob and I dance to At Last, while our friends and family look on with the satisfaction of people who know they've witnessed something true and beautiful. No regrets, Bob murmurs as he spins me around the small space we've cleared among the tables. Only that we didn't meet sooner. We met exactly when we were supposed to, when we were ready for what we found in each other. He's right, as he so often is. We needed our first loves to teach us how to love. We needed loss to teach us gratitude. We needed loneliness to teach us the value of connection. And we needed our individual strength to build something together that's stronger than either of us could be alone. The bookstore thrives, becoming exactly the community center David envisioned. The morning regulars who come for coffee and conversation. The book clubs that meet in the garden room. The children's story hours that fill the space with laughter and wonder. The poetry readings that draw people from 3 towns over. Bob and I settle into married life with the easy rhythm of people who've waited long enough for happiness to rush through it carelessly. We have coffee together every morning and plan gardens every evening. We disagree about books and politics and whether my coffee is actually terrible, but we do it all with the knowledge that disagreement doesn't threaten love. It enriches it. Sarah visits monthly, bringing James and their wedding plans and her growing appreciation for the life I've chosen. Michael calls weekly, his voice carrying the relief of someone who no longer worries about his father's loneliness. And sometimes late at night, when Bob is reading beside me and the house is quiet except for the sound of pages turning, I think about David. Not with sadness, but with gratitude for the foundation he helped me build and the strength he taught me to find. He would love Bob, I know. He would approve of this happiness that honors the past while embracing the future. Love, I've learned, is not a finite resource. Loving Bob doesn't diminish what I felt for David any more than loving Sarah diminished my capacity to love the bookstore, or the community, or the 1,000 small, beautiful things that make up a life well lived. Some stories end with happily ever after. But the best stories, I think, end with happily ever after. And then what? Because life goes on and love grows and every day offers new chances to choose connection over isolation, hope over fear, gratitude over regret. Bob reaches over to take my hand, his wedding ring catching the lamplight. "What are you thinking about second chances?" I tell him, "and how grateful I am for all of them. Even the Brussels sprouts." I laugh, the sound bright in our quiet living room. "Especially the Brussels sprouts. They brought you to my door after all." "Best investment I ever made," he says, and kisses me with the tenderness of someone who knows how precious and fragile and resilient love can be. Outside our window, the garden we planned together sleeps under the stars, waiting for spring to call it back to life. Just like we waited. Just like love always waits, patient and hopeful, and ready to bloom again when the conditions are right. This is what second chances look like. Not perfect, but real. Not without challenges, but rich with possibility. Not the end of our story, but a beautiful new chapter in a tale that's just beginning. And I can hardly wait to see what happens next.